expert in the fields of psychiatry and neurology and forensic psychiatry. Dr. Ballenger, pursuant to a court order, did you at some point in time have occasion to examine Jesse Osborne?
Yes, I did.
When did you meet with him?
Met with him 3 times, right before and right after Christmas in 2017.
What were the lengths of your meetings with him?
Each one was from 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
And was he compliant, pleasant during these interactions?
He was completely cooperative, friendly, pleasant, engaged from the first minute to the last minute, talked freely.
And what is your normal procedure for conducting an evaluation?
Well, I start with an explanation and a confirmation that they know what this is about. I'm not there to be their doctor and treat them. I'm there as part of their legal proceeding, and that I'm independent, although I tell them one team or the other pays for my time, but not for my opinion. And so my opinion will be mine, and it may help their case, it may hurt their case, it may have no effect on their case, and that it's not confidential, except in the sense it'll only be in legal proceedings, more or less, but I mean, because there are cameras and things that happen in cases like this. And then I start, as do people like me, with an unstructured question. I usually ask something like, after I confirm all those understandings. One of the understandings that I didn't mention that I should, that is that in doing the exam, they don't have to answer every question that I ask, but if they choose not to, that they did not, might end up in my report that they didn't answer this question. And there's some pertinence in this case in that Mr. Osborne, he asked me to call him Mr. Osborne. I'll sometimes slip and call Jesse, I'm sure. He asked, will that be held against me if I don't answer a question? And I said, that's a good question. I really don't know for sure, but it would probably depend on the circumstances and the question you didn't answer and the questions that you did answer. And then, as I was starting to say, I'm sorry. Most everybody who does forensic work like I'm here today to report starts with an unstructured question, like why are we here? What happened? Something like that. Tell me. I've read records. Tell me in your words what happened. And then we let them talk, asking for more detail about something if it's pertinent, but gathering information until they run out of what they're talking, and then I might take over and say, well, tell me about this, usually what they partially talked about before, tell me more about this. Or if a topic they didn't talk about that I need for them to talk about, tell me about this. And then I do formal, it's called mental status exam, but it's really evaluating them psychiatrically, because I'm that kind of evaluator. I'm a psychiatrist, and so I do that. I am trying to answer and help the court, the trier of fact, the judge in this case in particular, to deal, and I try to bring my psychiatric knowledge, experience, and the knowledge of my science and my field to bring it to help all of you who are doing this process with that process. Can I learn something that would be helpful to you?
And did you prepare a report following your examination in order to help all of us more clearly process the information that you had gleaned from Mr. Osborne?
Quite a long report.
Okay. An extensive report.
Yes, comprehensive report.
And it's my understanding that the court has read your report as well and is incorporating it into the findings that he will reach. And it has already been moved in as an exhibit, in addition to your waiver testimony from the previous proceeding. Did you review records or materials to incorporate in your assessment at that time?
Well, absolutely. I read everything that was available. Dr. Wagner just gave a good enumeration of all of the things that we had available to us, and I read the same things he did. All of the records, medical records, psychiatric evaluations before, prison records, police records, and a very, very large number of records.
And you incorporated them into your evaluation?
Yes.
Okay. And did you use additional testing tools in your evaluation?
The testing I do doesn't involve tools. And that's part of why I asked that we involve Dr. Wagner, because he has a PhD in doing tests. But briefly, I took a course in graduate school, in medical school, but it was in the Graduate School of Psychology, and we examined one person for 6 months using my kind of talking, listening methods, and 6 months using his kind of test, and we found the bottom line is we found the same thing.
And you paired your skill set with Dr. Wagner to reach your conclusions?
Yes.
Similarly, Dr. Maddox and Dr. Teitner have been working together for the defense?
Yes.
And you reviewed all of the reports by the other psychiatrists and psychologists who had seen Jesse prior to your seeing him as well, did you not?
Yes.
Okay. Including Dr. Sharman, Dr. Jones, Dr. Martin,
Dr. Atkinson.
Dr. Atkinson.
And they're incorporated their findings are incorporated in my report.
And did you reach a diagnostic opinion of Jesse Osborne during this process following your evaluation?
Yes. Following the 9 hours and study and analysis, I did.
And what was that?
That he had 2 psychiatric diagnoses. One, he had conduct disorder, and 2, malingering. He did not have the other diagnoses that had been proposed potentially, or that he proposed, or autism, schizophrenia, attenuated schizophrenia, autism,
Depressive disorder?
Depression, yes. The only diagnoses he had were conduct disorder and malingering.
And in fact, he had himself Googled some of those other disorders and looked at the symptoms, isn't that right?
Yes, he Googled autism, and I studied that extensively. He had no signs of autism. He Googled major depressive disorder with psychotic features, and he had no signs of that. He also says he had PTSD, and he had no signs of that.
Have you re-interviewed or tested Jesse since your report was issued? You haven't, right?
That is correct.
Okay, but you've incorporated other materials and information that you've reviewed between the report being issued for the waiver hearing and today?
Yes.
Okay. What sorts of materials have you reviewed?
Well, there's everything that we had available. Ultimately, the only clinicians that he saw were Dr. Teitner and Dr. Maddox, and so I had those 2 reports. We had the phone conversations. We had more information to study from the email traffic prior to the event. But so those comments about who he is and what the diagnoses are and what the analysis of this case involves, that was the way I had that was the current data.
And after reviewing all of the new information, has your diagnostic opinion of him changed?
No, it's become more solid, but it hasn't changed.
Okay. And how has it become more solid?
Well, Dr. Wagner used the notion of a scatter plot and over time. What has happened is we now have another 2 years of behavior to add to the time we had before, and it's been consistent as best we can see. It hasn't changed. He's changed a bit. He's aged a couple years. He's accomplished things like graduating from high school. But the basic issue that is the important issue for this hearing and understanding this case, in my opinion, that has not changed. And
what is that basic issue, central issue?
I think the central issue that explains this complex case, in all fairness, the facade he has of a nice young man, that's the way he presented to me. He stuck his hand out and shook my hand, looked me eye to eye for the entire 9 hours, was friendly, cooperative. That friendly, nice boy's the one who did so well in high school. Now, that lulls you too much into almost sleep to forget that he planned methodically to go and execute children on the playground and kill his father. So the thing that explains that, which is the central issue here, in my opinion, began when he was 12. So one of the things that we've learned in this 2 years is some more information has come out. One of them is it becomes more clear by his own admission that when he was 12, his attitude totally changed. His teachers now said he had a bad attitude. He admitted that. He said, I just made up excuses not to go to school, and I didn't go a lot. I didn't care about my grades at all. Now, this is a boy who graduated with honors 5 years later. When it's to his advantage and in his growth, he did a good job with the school here. For 2.5, 3 years, from the 6th grade through the 8th grade, he didn't care. And he didn't do his work initially when he was on house arrest. His mother did his work. And so it's my opinion that his conduct disorder started then. And it continued, and it led, unfortunately, to a interest in killing, specifically killing easily in a school setting. And that interest we know was there in February of 16 as he started sending videos of Columbine and terrorist killings and pictures of guns to his friend group, then the study group in his English group. And he decided to take a hatchet, machete is really not clear, but a hatchet, I think for sure, to school in his bag. He tried to recruit some friends and said, let's mess up the school. I think one of them even, let's shoot up the school. And mostly he was discouraged. Apparently one person said, yeah, I'll do it with you, let me burn a car. But some of them said, yeah, I'll do that, but then later, no, I'm not going to do that. Mostly they were discouraged, but he went ahead and did it. Was reported, as was brought out earlier today, to the police, and the police came a couple hours later to his home, and he told there were no weapons in his school bag, but Jesse told them that the hatchet was out on the property and showed them where it was. There are 4 or 5 places in this record that a chill went down my spine. The first one, chronologically, was Lieutenant Lyles from the Oconee Sheriff's Office, who went out there to investigate that. And Jesse said to him, "I'm going to do Columbine better." That was back in February of March of 16. "I'm going to do Columbine better." And led Lieutenant Lyles, and I would wonder whether he's ever done this before or since. He said to the parents, "You people need to be careful. He's going to kill one of you in the future." Now, I can't say that without the shudder down my spine today. That's the first. Later, when Dr. Sharman said, "This boy seems normal. He's never done any violence, but I'm really worried that he could talk about chopping up his classmates." That really worries me, and it just sort of hangs in the air. Dr. Sharman's an experienced psychologist. But what is so clear now is that Jesse went on with his thinking about this. He was the prime mover. His peers didn't keep him moving forward. He did. So, for instance, his peers discouraged him in March. When he got off house arrest and got back on the internet in April, he sends out Arnold Schwarzenegger's picture saying, "I'm back." He's back. And then we know that in the summer months, at least in August, he had an internet conversation with someone about school shooting and who tried to discourage him. No, he went on and planned. And to me, as I look at the literally hundreds or thousands of emails and searches, he came to the Rainbow Group. Now, it's unclear, although maybe they contacted him. I don't think it was an accident at all that he stuck with them. It wasn't, as has been alleged, he sort of discovered accidentally that, oh my goodness, these people are interested in school shootings. What he told me was that he went and searched for one shooter group on the internet, and they weren't serious enough, so he went and found another one who seemed serious enough about it. But his interaction about it was not them talking him into anything, in my opinion. 19 out of 20 of the messages were him teaching them how to clear a room, to kill 100 people, not one. They were sort of amateurs. He had experience, and he knew how to do this. They didn't know how to sight down a gun, and he taught them how to do that. All of what was presented yesterday about the making bombs, he told them about that. And he came out of that, and as it was presented yesterday, talked that in the 2 weeks before, the 8 days before, all day long and all night long, many of those days, up to the last day before having this another chilling conversation with that female, and saying, "Yeah, she asked some question about huddling them in a room, and he said, "Yes, you just huddle in the door, and get between them and the door, and execute them one by one." And he said they both said fun, and he responded, "Yes, that's fun." Very chilling, as are his comments later to me and to Dr. Wagner and to Dr. Teichner, that kind of thinking is fun.
And Dr. Teichner was October of 2019.
Yes. So it goes from September of 16 to December of 17 when he tells me and Dr. Wagner these things. And then just recently, Dr. Teichner, and he says that when he thinks now about this, it still excites him. And he still, as Dr. Wagner just described, he still thinks that he doesn't feel anything. He doesn't feel remorse. He doesn't feel guilt. And those are part of the criteria for the conduct disorder. Now, and Dr. Teichner agrees with Dr. Wagner and I that he has essentially a personality disorder, but technically in the DSM we can't, we can't diagnose a personality disorder until someone's 18, but personality disorders are thought to be stable. That's the whole point of them. They go all the way through your adult life, and so so he has a conduct disorder. He is months away from having the diagnosis, in my opinion, of antisocial personality, and I say months because he'll be 18 in less than a year, and that's when we can start the diagnosis of personality disorder, and I think we'll switch then to antisocial personality. At this point, it's conduct disorder.
And he told you at one point in time that he had tortured animals, isn't that right?
He told me on several occasions. I saw him 3 times. I sort of just asked that as part of the evaluation of a violent person. You have fire setting as a child, destroy property, cruelty to animals. He told me, yes, that he loves to catch crickets. And I said, how in the world do you catch crickets? He said, you just scoop your hand along the grass and you catch crickets. And then he said, well, then you pull their wings off and then watch when the ants eat them. It's so much fun. And I said, okay, anything else like that? And he said, yeah, bees. You also can pull their wings off and watch them do all sorts of crazy things. And you described in a very animated way how it's also fun to watch the bees, to shoot frogs with BBs and then pick them up and throw them against concrete and then pick them up and throw them against concrete. And then the next time he went back to it, I think the answer, what do you do for fun? Not much, but animals, I love to taunt dogs. I shoot them, shoot near them. It's great to see how crazy they grow with you do that. And then he brought up birds. And he said, I get birds and feed them to the dogs, and it's just wild what the dogs do. And I said, how in the world do you get birds? And he said, I shoot them out of the air. And I said, you can do that with the BB gun? He said, yes. Now I'm a little skeptical of that, but somehow that was, so it was really a large number. And with the same chilling sense of fun about that. And eagerness, and almost that was his most fun that he had.
And now he said that to Dr. Teichner as well, didn't he?
Yes. Now he gave a reduced version of that. He didn't list them all.
Yes. But he mentions the frogs again.
Yes, absolutely. And essentially insects pulling their wings off, he mentioned that. And there was one other. Birds, I think.
What do you make of the request for this book, and you heard some of the phone calls, they talk about his television shows that he's been watching are SWAT, Navy SEALs, Big Brother. What does that say about his interests? And now I will also say he has voiced interests in new religious materials and voiced conversion. So I'd also like your take on that awakening aspect of the case.
He predicted to me around Christmas in 17 that he would vary from answering, how long do you think you are going to be in prison? I don't know, 30 years, maybe 20, maybe the legislature will pass laws that'll get me out. I asked him, how long do you think you should be in prison? He said, if it was up to me, 1 day. So he would talk about that, but he also then talked about, I know what the laws are, I knew what they were, I had Googled them, if I'm tried as a adolescent child, I get out when I'm 21, but if adult, at least 30. So he knew all of that, but he, toward the end, said, I'm probably going to prison. Maybe I'll meet a minister and convert and find God in prison. So he sort of predicted that idea. So particularly given the phone conversations where I'm tired of reading the Bible. I read a chapter a day like I'm supposed to, but I'm not going to read more than one chapter. And it's sort of, I'm skeptical that that's a genuine thing, because if, in my opinion, if it were a firm conversion experience, he would be talking about it, he would be witnessing to people instead of just giving a little lip service. I don't know whether he's actually witnessed to his roommate or not. He said he did it once and he didn't want to do it anymore. It would be more consuming, it would give him energy to study the Bible, he would have a more consuming interest in that.
Well, I'll submit to you that he studies the Bible in a very intellectual way. Is there an difference between intellectual study of material like that and learning details about it and a conversion experience?
I tell you one thing that I'll try to answer that question, which requires a complex answer. That working in this case for a couple of years now, he had malingered, been deceitful in so many ways that I don't know whether an intellectual interest in the Bible is his idea that he's going to get out of prison by doing that, or is it a true religious experience? I frankly don't know. What he says is he spends all day in his cell, sleeping, listening to his radio, and occasionally reading his Bible unless he's tired of reading his Bible. Now, I would think a genuine conversion, he would have more interest in it, but I don't know. But the other half of your question is about what he is interested in. He watches shooter shows. The Navy SEAL show and another one that you mentioned, SWAT. And I'll tell you frankly, my first reaction when we saw the telephone call about the book he wanted, the Hunting the Caliphate, and I'm assuming that he didn't have any thing about what's inside it. All he had was some information about the fly leaves, which you could get online. And now that's an assumption. But the fly leaves talk about stuff that my first, frankly, reaction was, is this a job search? And I didn't know whether he wants to be the guys killing the ISIS people or join ISIS. That's if you are not lulled by this facade of pleasantness. Dr. Sharman hit it right on the head. He called it, he's personable, likable even. I've met killers who were likable before. If you get beyond that, then there's all this talk about over multiple years now of the fun of killing. Then that book, both of those sides, if they enjoy killing, that's a good job. Now, it's really, again, a chill down my spine moment to think that. But that's my answer to your question.
What do you make of the discussions of suicidal thoughts?
I'm all over the board about, and I'm not a bit surprised all over the board, that he talks about it here and there, particularly when people ask him questions about it. His life didn't have much in it, and it's been filled up with very grisly thoughts. And he's got some insight now that there's something wrong with him, in the sense that he doesn't have feelings that the normal people have. So that he would be bummed out, quite suicidal, some, I can believe that. But, you know, this is something that's sadly very commonly, it's a daily occurrence for psychiatrists. And a third of the people we see are depressed. A third of them are suicidal at any time. It's a daily thing we have to evaluate. And when we evaluate whether we let somebody leave our office every day, it goes to things, well, have you tried it before? How serious were your attempts before? I mean, were they lethal attempts or superficial, easy to recover from attempts? Jesse's never, to my knowledge, actually tried to kill himself. He said he tried to kill himself by ingesting toothpaste. And I've in the last few days, read with the rationale that it would give you a heart attack, he believes, somehow. He said he put a gun to his head one time. Well, I saw a picture of him with a gun to his head when he was showing off to a girl prior to the shooting. So I don't know. I don't see serious suicidal thoughts or actions in Jesse.
And do you think that the bullying that you've reviewed all of these records. What do you think the bullying aspect of this case says about Jesse, and how did it inform the criminality that we're looking at, if at all?
His bullying or being bullied? Now, he bullies that little boy in February, cowering in the thing, and he's treating him like an animal. Come on out. Joining the Rainbow group that wants to, their goal was to make, stated goal was to make people afraid to be in public places. Quickly said, that's not an ISIS idea, it's our idea. We want to make people afraid. So, I mean, he has. Now, he has a sad, rich experience in bullying. I tried, since it was alleged from the very beginning that bullying made him do it. You know, I've looked at and tried to make an analysis of that, but the analysis ranges from, you know, claims that he made multiple reports to the schools, but we only find one when we search hard with that. That he was bullied a lot at school, and I have a report from one of his friends saying, yeah, he was bullied once. Another, one of his classmates says, no, he wasn't bullied. But we do know one conference where he reported it. His grandparents said another time they reported it, but there's no record of that. So, and then what he says is that his dad drank every day, and some of those days was abusive. He describes that he was so bad one time he had to leave the house. That was when he was 10. There was another time when he fled to his grandparents. What that suggests is it was not every day and terrible every day. Now, the reports from his half-sibs are not good. I mean, they say that abusive, certainly verbally, sometimes physically. Jesse says once either threw a baseball at him or hit him with a baseball bat. It goes back and forth about. So I think he was bullied. I think he bullies others. To anticipate your next question, I think it has helped shape who he is, as have lots of other things. He's been sadly taught, best I see, not to feel responsible for what you do. This is a sort of a paucity, if not absence of, you got to pay for what you did, and you know, that kind of parental and family unit teaching. So I think it was an important thing. The notion that it made him develop a character or disorder which, like, typically started when he was 12. He still has it. It's become a personality disorder, which I think is going to last for the rest of his life. The notion that bullying made that, did it contribute to that? Yeah. How many people in prison today have a bullying history? A fairly high number. How many have poor upbringing? A very high number. There are also a lot of people here and anywhere else who had bullying and poor upbringings and didn't bully or shoot somebody or develop a whole lifelong pattern about it. I mean, now that's part of the complexity of this case and the others like it. It's hard to evaluate children. We don't want to see children, certainly not as killers. We don't, I can remember I got booed one time when I brought the data forward that depression, major depressive disorder, peaks at 18 to 24 to 26 years old. But a significant number of people start when they're 4, 6 years old, 8 years old, and the audience didn't want to hear it. That, no, that couldn't be the way children are. It's very hard for us to think about children, our children, as having these kind of problems, but sadly they do.
I want to ask you about the evidence, if there is any, of immaturity or impetuosity or failure to appreciate risks and consequences of conduct that you saw in Jesse Osborne as it relates to these crimes.
Well, I agree with most of the people who've seen him that he's right squarely in the middle of his peer group in terms of his intellectual abilities and his other abilities, although some of them are ahead of his peer group. His ability with the internet and the different platforms and ability to learn and extract information from the internet, that's ahead of most adolescents, not all, but some. His IQ is right there, and that's the best measure of maturity. But, for instance, Dr. Atkinson says, and she did a very big pre-adjudication waiver review, and she says he's mature like his age group. He's not normal like his age group because he started at 12 on this wrong path. So that part of his relationship, of his growth, is not equal to his peer group. So he's not really interested in relationships, so his pro-social relationships, close relationships, probably are not as well developed as other adolescents. Now, he told me about a girlfriend and even that being intimate with her one time. He told somebody else 10 girlfriends. At varying times, he says he has lots of friends. At his school, he had friends. At Airsoft, he has friends. When he goes to Cherokee, he has friends. In prison, now he has friends. So I wouldn't think he would stand out from other adolescents as being someone with no friends. Does he not have really close relationships? I would agree with that, except his relationship with his grandparents and his mother. He had somewhat close with his half-sibs before they left. And so it's a yes-no kind of thing. Now, the part of the Aiken-Myers evaluation about whether he was impulsive, goodness, he was not impulsive. He told me he planned what he did for 2 years. I know he planned it for at least 6 to 7 months from February to September. And he planned his defense all by himself. He decided to malinger. I don't think anybody suggested that to him, and he malingered to everybody he talked to in the first year or two. It was a complexity in his evaluation that we had to deal with. Impetuous, he was alone with these thoughts, perhaps, except when he sought out a support group in the Rainbow group. And he, again, to me, that's very close to impulsive. He was not impulsive. And he planned very well what he was going to do and what he did.
Risk appreciation?
He told me that he knew the prison terms he was going to get. We have Google searches for what it would be like for him at his age, what if he were waived to adult court, what additional charges would he get for the number of firearms he took. I mean, so appreciating the consequences, yes. I mean, and some of the time, but not all the time, he realized he's going to spend most of his adult life in prison. Sometimes he has the fantasy that if he just makes good enough grades, he's going to get out next year. Or if he's Christian enough, he'll get out next year. So, yes, I think he certainly appreciated it, and it certainly is equal to his peer group, who he understands a great, and before he did the act, he understood it, consequences a great deal.
Is there anything that could make a meaningful difference could have made a meaningful difference in the trajectory of his emerging disorders?
Could have in the past? Well, I agree with the spirit of what Dr. Wagner said about, I mean, this sort of notion that if he had just gotten treatment when Dr. Jones recommended it, I don't think that would have made, I can't imagine that would have made any difference. You know, what would likely have happened, he would have been referred to a psychologist or a social worker. He would have, since he was obsessed by his own admission with school shootings at that point, he would have probably not gone more than once, twice, or 3 times. He would not have been motivated for treatment. Dr. Wagner is right. For this kind of personality disorder, we widely acknowledge that there's no effective treatment. Certainly not for what I think he really is, which is an antisocial personality, what we used to call sociopath or psychopath. Incarceration is the treatment because it keeps them from hurting people on the outside. Sometimes, I mean, there's this myth that they burn out in their 50s. But as a treatment in the people